sequel rather than a reboot. The fact that it was a reboot, I think, was totally superfluous to the idea. Anyway, okay,
So we'll put that's the ish.
yeah, that's
in 7-ish.
That is the ish. So we'll take a deep breath. Good. Now we have a cut point. So I guess welcome to 7-ish things. I am your co-host Merlin and my co-host Steve.
Hello, I am Steve.
So the idea here is that we have seven-ish things. Obviously, there was a big long intro that was recorded before we even started this that I'll cut back on the end of it. But the idea is that we're going to tackle sort of 7-ish topics as we talk through them. It gives us sort of a guide path, a path to walk down as we have our conversations throughout the day in a weird world where it's just as much. I mean, every day it feels like pissing into the wind most days right now. So,
Indeed.
It's a chance to not only riff with a friend of mine who I've talked to or I've known for almost 20 years, probably 19 years now.
Something like that. Let's 97. Yeah, this will be year 20 that we met.
Right.
Probably 20 years that we've met. We'll call it 19 that we've actually been friends.
Right. Yeah. Well, so 1997 is when we met. And we looked for that place in Arlington Farms, but it won't be until September of this year that it'll be 20 years of moving into Arlington Farms in Davis.
Yes.
So, the first thing on our 7-ish things is who are you people? And, the story of Steve and I, Steve with air quotes Dirk around it, which is a different story.
We'll get to that.
Is that 20 some odd years ago, a friend of mine from high school went to Davis and I started living in the dorms. I was never...
That would be the University of California at...
Yeah, I was never a student there. I never registered. I had a reg card that was bestowed upon me by my co-host and did all the things that one does in college except for getting a degree, which is kind of apropos because I literally got my degree in the mail today and I hung it on the fridge from Arizona State.
I saw the picture on Facebook.
Yeah. So I am a college graduate, just not from UC Davis from 20 years ago. So Brian and I hung out and I had a girlfriend in the dorms and I really did the whole college experience. And then when it came time to sophomore year, where he was moving out of the dorms, he said, do you want to get a place together? And I said, yeah, man, I'll move up here full time. We'll get a place together. And then like a week later, he said, there's these 4 guys down on the 3rd floor who are getting a place and could use like 2 more guys. Do you want to go meet them? I'm like, yeah, that sounds awesome. And I think we met you and literally drove down to Arlington Farms and signed the lease that day. I think we signed the lease the day I met you.
That's probably about right.
Right. So it was Steve, it was me, it was Brian, who... We'll probably talk about Brian a fair bit because he's an interesting fella. But at the time, someone I went to high school with who hadn't quite figured out that he was really pretty and good with women. He shortly thereafter did, but he hadn't figured it out yet.
And then he was impossible to live with.
Yeah. Sean, who was super geeky sci-fi nerd, he'd fit in great on the show. I think he does his own podcast about biomedicine. We'll give him a shout out. I'll look it up. Doug, who is indescribably Doug. He's just Doug. There are many stories from that era that involve Doug and posters and whatnot. And Garrett. And Garrett is, another shout out, is a professor of philosophy at the University of Southern Indiana, one of the most brilliant people I know, and certainly an ally in all things morality. So, for me, I'm a grown up. I'm a parent. Senior director of sales for a drone company. I'm a certainly liberal and angry atheist. I'm a writer, a poet. I wrote some novels. I'm graphic design. I'm a photographer. I play a lot of video games. I watch a lot of movies, and I do a lot of geeky shit. So, this podcast for me is sort of an effort to not only sit down and have conversations with people who I enjoy, but also give myself a chance to rant and rave about the world at large, whether it be the new Ghostbusters movie or the new Ghostbusters president, whichever comes up and makes us more interesting.
We can shoot him with a proton pack.
So that's me. Who are you?
I am Stephen, also known as Dirk. Went to the University of California at Davis. I got a degree in political science, and then went into sales.
I forgot your degree was in poli-sci.
It was indeed.
Yeah.
Yes. Which I guess when we are discussing politics will make me sound slightly more intelligent, at least theoretically. After college, I went into sales. That's another place that Merlin and I actually were working together. But I did 13 years for various consumer electronics companies in sales with territories that ranged from the California Central Valley to the continental United States. And then I kind of got sick of it and became a freelance writer, which, yeah, it makes about as much sense as it sounds like. But it's only actually been about 2 years that I have been doing that full time, but it's been working out pretty well.
Has it actually been 2 years?
It'll be 2 years in May.
Wow, that went fast.
So I'm a freelance writer, and I write on numerous topics on the interwebs, some of them consumer electronics related, and the rest mostly entertainment related. Primarily, I am a deputy editor and contributing writer to cinemablend.com. That is where I put most of my words on out into the world, writing about movies and video games and whatever else comes along. And so that's what I do. And I sit at a computer and I write, which is weird. It's still weird. It's great. I really enjoy it, but it's a very strange job.
It's not, I'm obviously, as a writer myself, it's something that I would certainly enjoy. And I think the moment that I was like, oh, Steve's a writer, was the moment that I clicked on a clickbait headline and you were the writer. I know,
without even realizing that.
It was something about Suicide Squad. It happened recently. It was like 6 months ago, and it was about what's her
Margot
face?
Robbie shorts.
Margot Robbie shorts, and how uncomfortable she was in her costume choices.
That story stayed up, in the getting the clicks for quite some time.
Yeah, well, and it was
because anything that says something about Margot Robbie not liking her costume.
What I liked about that in particular is that it's a twofer. So it's not just it's Margot Robbie shorts, which is going to get a certain amount of clicks to it, but it's also a like from the other side of that of, oh God, what did they make her wear? Right. Not just like, oh, Margot Robbie's hot, but
it's a little bit of both. I mean, and the funny part of that story, as I recall it, actually was. The reason that she didn't like the shorts was not, or the costume in general, was not specifically like oh my God, they're making me wear these tiny shorts and, it's terrible. It was that she had never, they filmed primarily in London. She had never been to England before or not spent any particular amount of time there. And was really enjoying eating at the various restaurants that one can go to in the area and wanted to try all the different foods that she could eat for the first time. And so going out to lunch and eating a big meal of whatever she found that looked interesting and then having to put the shorts on was what she really didn't like.
Right. Well, but, it's I think for me though, it was a pretty codifying experience for what you do, and just as I've gotten older and my friends have done more things and been more successful and have been in a variety of, somebody I went to high school with, for example, is Scarlett Johansson's stunt woman for all the Avengers movies.
Huh, cool.
So there was this sort of like murmur at our 20-year reunion of like, is she gonna show up? Is she coming? Is she? And she couldn't make it because she was on a film shoot somewhere. But people who didn't know her in high school, myself included. But most of the people who didn't know her in high school were just like, oh, she didn't come. I was so looking forward to, I don't know, rubbing elbows with celebrity stunt. Well, tell me what Scarlett's like.
My wife has somebody that she went to high school with is an actor. He was not like a major character, but was a regular character on Friday Night Lights, the series.
Okay.
And has done other guest spots here and there, and every once in a while, we'll be watching the show and either he'll pop up on screen or his name will pop up in the opening credits, and she'll be like, there's that guy I knew in high school.
Yeah. Well, there was a guy who went to Davis who was a male model for a while, and he was on like hair dye boxes and stuff. And Jess knew him. My ex-wife knew him, and so she would be like, oh, I can't remember his name, Jeremy or something. Like, there's Jeremy, and it was just like on the Maxim hair dye boxes in the early 2000s to frost your tips or whatever it is you did.
I've always thought that was an interesting model thing, is just being on the product box.
That's what I do. I am a product model. I have dyed tips, and I have professionally dyed tips. So the name of this program is 7-ish Things, and that's tentative because this is episode 1. Lord knows how this quality will come out. This might get scrapped. But the idea was to, as I said earlier, to talk about the 7 things. So that was number 1, is who we are. And I think we're making progress so far. So number 2 was President Trump. Darth Orange, and how did it happen? And you and obviously we follow each other on Facebook, and I post a lot, and you've seen a lot of what I've posted. So I know that you and I have similar political leanings. So we're not going to get into I have friends who I would invite on the show who we can
if we wanted to debate.
get into some shit in with, but I think it's important to ask. I think you're a writer. You're just a guy, right? You're just a dude. I'm just a dude.
I'm just this guy,
And yeah, you have a degree in political science, but you're not exactly like working in the political spectrum. So I think it's an important question to ask sort of the everyday citizen of we know the story is that Hillary was a terrible candidate and that people were angry, and this is the backlash of that. But what do you think?
I certainly don't subscribe to the she was a terrible candidate idea. I think when people say she was a terrible candidate, I think what's actually going on there is she was a woman who had been who has been in the public eye, the global eye for 2 decades and then some. She, everybody knew who she was. In that period of time, you can't avoid the baggage. Stuff happens, your life happens, her husband's presidency happened.
Right.
And you can't go through that without getting some of that on you. I think if the same Hillary Clinton showed up as the senator from New York and everything prior to that hadn't happened, I'm not going to say that it's going to turn out differently. Well, I'm not going to say the result will be different, but it's certainly going to turn out differently. I think that's everybody had already made up their minds about Hillary Clinton before the election happened. That's what happened there was if you liked her, and if you didn't, there was absolutely zero that she was going to do to convince you otherwise.
Well, and that feels really valid, because I think on the other side, I don't think you have a worst candidate or a worstest. I don't think you have a candidate it's hard to have a candidate as bad as Donald Trump. It takes a lot of suspension of disbelief to say, I think one of the interesting Twitter feeds that I've read recently is Trump regrets about people who voted for him, and he's doing the things that he said that he was going to do, and that's surprising to a lot of people. Or he said that some things he said that he wasn't going to do, and now that's happening. Like healthcare, right?
Right.
You said that I'd have healthcare, and there doesn't seem to be any plan involved, and so people are starting to kind of get the feeling that he didn't know what he was doing, and he was saying a lot of things, and he's dangerous, not because of what he plans to do, but because quite possibly from day to day he doesn't know what he plans to do. And I put that video online yesterday, something I wrote, because what people kept asking me was like, what are you really scared that Trump's going to do? And there's certainly a lot that he can do that I'm afraid of. But there's a little bit of hyperbole about they're going to come for me. I'm a Jewish atheist. They're coming for me. The trains are coming. Get on the train. And I'm not scared of that at all. I think that's ridiculous. I'm not scared that the second Civil War is imminent. I'm not scared that we're all going to be taking up arms. I am scared of Quebec. What happened in Quebec, where you've got a right-wing kid supporter of Trump he's not, it had nothing to do with Trump. It's not Trump's fault. The kid's crazy. What he did was he heard something that touched his ego and gave him license in his own mind to do a horrible act of shooting up a mosque. And that's not Trump's fault per se, because crazy people are crazy people are crazy people. Just like if someone shot up a Planned Parenthood clinic because they disagreed with Obama, that's not Obama's fault. That's a crazy person, right? What's his face? The guy, the shooter of the black church
in South Carolina.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
That's not the right wing's fault. That's a crazy person doing a crazy act. But what I fear is that there are people who ride that line of looking for legitimacy in their belief system, and as society shuts them down, as we all collectively go, that's not what you're supposed to do. When our leadership comes forward and says, but that's okay, you can do that.
Right.
You should definitely do that. But didn't mean it that way, right? Trump's never advocated once shooting up a mosque. That's ridiculous. But he does toe the line of Islamophobia and promote that. And it's easy to say that someone who can step over that line and say, this is someone who this guy's important. This guy believes what I believe. I'm going to do this for him. And it's not his fault, but it's certainly the tone that he sets. And so I think you're right about the how. I think that all of the baggage that Hillary brought with her was, she thought she had a backpack. She showed up with the luggage from Joe versus the volcano.
Right. And I think she knew what she was getting into. She's not a stupid lady. She understood what she needed to overcome. And I feel like she did a pretty good job of it. I was probably going to vote for her from day one. Having said that, I was happy to vote for her. I did not vote for her because she wasn't Donald Trump.
Right.
I did not vote against Donald Trump. I did in fact vote for her when I voted.
Yeah.
That was my and I'm not sure that I would have believed that I was going to do that 12 months earlier. I think she did do about as much as she was going to possibly do. But she was there for so long in the public eye.
It's just Hillary. It's Hillary fatigue.
Yes,
we were fatigued.
I think that's what it was. I think there was Hillary fatigue.
Well, that makes sense. And you're right that Bill brought with him a lot of baggage too. Right? It's hard to disassociate him at the convention going, I met a girl, from I did not have sexual relations. Right? Those two, like, it's his voice, he's a character, it's like Obama, right? You can't separate. It's hard to separate, Luther the Anger Translator now from Obama the person. They're intertwined from a pop culture kind of thing. So, moving on to number 3, which kind of lends itself to the conversation is there's a lot going on that people obviously disagree with. There's the topic du jour, which is the hashtag Muslim ban. And I had a couple of really interesting online conversations this week with people who I thought the conversation was going to be, it's not a Muslim ban. That's not what the conversation was at all. The conversation was, we should definitely ban Muslims, which was weird. Right. It was straight out. It was like, no, all pretense aside, this is that's an angry, violent religion. And of course, I pushed back, like, really? All 1.5 billion of all of them, and it's intractable. This idea that, you know what it reminds me of. I went to Beijing. You've been to China.
I have been to China. Yes.
So when I don't know if you had this experience, but I did. You'll tell me if this is something you felt as well. One of the weird little things that happened to me in China was I saw Chinese flags over a building, as one does in China. And it made me uncomfortable, like socialized, angry, against the Red Scare, uncomfortable. Something bubbled in my soul that made me go like, oh, this makes me feel icky. Like I'm supposed to not, this is the enemy.
Right.
That G.I. Joe enemy. And Amy's mentioned this before. She's told me what this was. But it's that we were indoctrinated into the American idea of freedom, and that the stars and stripes make us comfortable and you can wear that like a blanket. But that Red Scare flag made me like, this is... So that uncomfortableness is what I feel a lot of right now with what's going on in our current political climate, where I've got this sort of like, this doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like we're doing what we're supposed to do. Like even Desert Storm, What was the one after 9/11? What was that? Desert Storm?
That was Desert. No,
No, Desert Storm was the 90s.
yeah, that was the 90s.
Shock and awe.
Whatever,
Shock
yeah,
whatever we
whatever
called
it was
it.
called.
The Iraq War.
Yes,
The original Iraq War. So even during the Iraq War, there was that. I still had that patriotism, stars and bars thing. Like, yeah, let's get them. Shock and awe. I'm down, right? But now the things that we're doing under this, like a Muslim ban, that doesn't feel. It doesn't feel like us. It doesn't feel like. It feels like your brother got hit in the head and he's turned into Sam Kinison. He's just screaming at you all the time, and you don't know why.
I feel like yeah, no, I totally understand where you're coming from. We were going in one direction, and now we've changed a course. We have tangibly changed a course, and we're going somewhere different. I feel like we as a country and as a planet we've been slowly progressing in this one direction. The way going back to because since we're pop culture nerds, I'm looking forward to the day that Star Trek happens. I'd like, in order for the United Federation of Planets to exist, the Earth has to first unite together. And I look forward. I won't live that long, but like I feel like that day will happen. Like I felt like that day would happen. If it does happen, it's now going to take a few more decades than I thought it would. This whole isolationism general feeling, which I think that's ultimately what it is. This whole, the Muslim ban, I'm going to bring the jobs back out from the other countries into the United States, and we will tax the products that ship in from other countries more. All of that is this. It's ultimately isolationism.
Yeah, well,
and that is bad. I do not accept that idea. I do not like it. And that's the feeling that I have is like we were doing so well. We were getting better every day. We were getting better, and now we're not. I feel like we're not going to get better for a while.
Yeah, and I've got a lot of friends who are actively it's not PTSD, but they're sad. They're crying daily about what's happening. They see. It's so weird because I have this vague recollection of people complaining about Obama signing executive orders and that you shouldn't do that. And my God, is he an emperor? And now literally all Trump has done. There has not been a law passed. He has signed no laws. Yeah. He is completely governing by fiat right now. And 65% of the country is going like, you need to slow down. And the other 35% is like, yeah, keep doing it. But it's the same 35% that were like, that other dude shouldn't do that.
Right.
So
it turns out that it's just, we
lost our...
I lost my audio. I don't know. Are we still recording?
Yes. You're good. Keep talking.
I'll keep talking. It's like, hey, it turns out that all that really matters is whether or not that guy is doing the thing that I want him to do. Well, if the guy in charge is signing the executive orders that I like, then I'm in favor of it. And if he's not, then I don't. At least that's what that 35% that we're talking about. Because it's the executive orders were bad then, and they're okay now. And keeping your email in a private server was bad then, but it's totally fine now.
Right. So
it's like, can't we obviously, like, honestly agree? Like, okay, if the private email server is bad, then tell Trump that it's bad. Like, can't we do that much?
Well, he said it's bad. So I feel like we're
right.
We talked about being in a with Obama, we were a post-racist society, which was bullshit.
Yeah, that was crap.
And then for a while,
it was a nice idea. It was crap.
And now we're in the post-fact society, which is bullshit. I think here's one that's not bullshit. I think we're in the post-hypocrisy era. I don't think people have any... Hypocrisy is not shameful at all anymore. Be like, oh yeah, I definitely believed that 20 minutes ago, but now that it's me who's doing it, it's totally fine. It's that Nixonian, like, I don't think the president can do it if the president doesn't, it's not a crime. So I mean, it's weird. I think we're in it doesn't like, there is, I don't know if it's a blanket appeal to stupidity, which is what it feels like, is that, our constituents are such that they put party above country, that they put politics above country, that they put ideas above country. And so the fact that I'm a hypocrite doesn't matter. They're going to vote for me anyway. They're going to put me back in the speaker spot. It doesn't matter. Wisconsin's going to reelect Paul Ryan, regardless of how much he does the exact thing that he said Obama was doing that was wrong, which is the exact same thing that Obamacare was in the first place. That's Romney care. That's a Republican idea.
Right.
And
Yes.
as soon as
Obamacare was the Republican plan that the Republicans came up with in the 90s to fight against Hillary's health care plan when she presented that as First Lady under Clinton.
right. So so I don't know.
It's like, I mean, and if you think, and right now, we're dealing with the healthcare stuff, and it's like, okay, fine. You if you honestly believe that Obamacare is the worst thing in the world, and it should be abolished, that's fine. Like, if you truly believe that, I accept that. I accept that you believe it. I disagree personally, but to not have a replacement ready, like, okay, then fix it. Like, come up with your own plan and give me your plan and pass your plan, but you don't have a plan, and you're going to repeal the other thing anyway. And people who had health care, a year ago, last year, are not going to have it next year. And that's good. Like, that is the preferable solution. Yeah. There was a tweet that went viral, specifically about the healthcare. But I think it works when you're talking about Muslim bans and everything else, which is the problem with this argument is that I can't figure out how to convince you to care about other people. And ultimately, I think that's what a lot of this comes down to, is some of us care about, want what's best for everybody, and it really feels like other people just want what's best for them. I don't want to feel that way. I feel like that is the most cynical way to look at this, and I don't want to have that opinion, but I have a hard time looking at it any other way.
Well, I don't think you're wrong. I think that the idea of what's in it for me has somehow really permeated. Well, there's two ideas, and you go all the way back to like Reaganomics and the idea of trickle down, and why a poor family in rural Tennessee would vote Republican. Of course, there's social issues, but the idea of trickle down is that, I will make it one day, that Joe the plumber, I'm going to own a business, I'm going to be a millionaire one day, and I don't want to pay those taxes when I do. That lie, that idea, that bag of magic beans, I think it's telling in general that people believe that shit and continue to believe that shit to this day. And what's more is that it's amazing to me that politicians believe, like, they still think trickle down. Let's just give it one more shot, guys. I know it's been 30 years of failure, but one more shot. Right. Let's just cut taxes for the rich so that the rich people keep donating money to me, so that I can keep getting elected, so that I can keep having money donated to me, so I can keep getting. It's like this weird cyclical thing. So the burning question is, if you're an average citizen who leans left socially, right, which is to say you're not an asshole, because I think that I'm totally comfortable with saying that if you're against marriage equality, if you're against reproductive rights, if you're against racial equality, racial justice, that you're just pretty much an asshole. I'm very comfortable saying that. So if you lean left, i.e. are not an asshole, and you're watching, the president of the United States by fiat sign Muslim bans, or threaten choice, or defunding, threatening to defund PBS and arts programs. If you're the average citizen, what do? What's your, we're two guys sitting on a couch in a podcast. I guess that's a step. Yeah. But, getting our voices out there, right? I did something yesterday that was something I've never done before, which is put me out there. I'll put writing out there all day long, but I put myself on camera, which was terrifying. And of course, all I did was like, God, am I really that bald? But why did I shave my beard off?
I gave money to the ACLU. I've never done that before.
Yeah, well, so I did that recently for the first time as well, and it was because of all that had happened, and I was going to a 3-year-old's birthday party, and I was like, this child doesn't need more shit, but you know what they do need is a donation to the ACLU.
Yeah.
So I talked to my kids, and I said, this is what we're going to get them, and this is what this money's going to be used for, and my kids are... What I love about my kids is that they don't live in the bubble. They just live in the world of common sense. So when I say to my kids, who are 11 and 8, or really they're 10 and 7 for the next month, they'll be 10 and 8, and then the next month they'll be 11 and 8. I'm skipping ahead. But when I try to explain, we were talking about Martin Luther King Jr. and the idea of civil rights, and how I've always explained it to my kids is that grown-ups can be silly and grown-ups can be wrong. Grown-ups are wrong a lot. Grown-ups are wrong all the time. And if you think of something and you think to yourself, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense that a black woman and a white man can't fall in love, that they can't be married. That doesn't make any sense. And my kids are like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Like, you have to give them rules for them to hate, right? Hate requires rules that if you don't give them those rules, they don't learn to hate or have those biases in that way. If you teach your kids that everybody's cool, everybody's mellow, everybody's this, that they're going to run into an angry white dude, an angry black dude, and an angry Latino dude, an angry Latino lady, and a crazy Chinese woman, whatever they're going to run into, right? They're going to run into those people in their life, but they're not going to. That second word in all those instances doesn't exist. That crazy person, that crazy lady, that crazy dude, right? It doesn't matter their nationality or race. And so I think that I love the idea, the romance of the idea of a post-racial society, but what it really means is it's the Bulworth line, right? I wish I remember the Bulworth line. What he actually says, the proactive procreation.
Yeah, we'll have to edit this in.
Yeah, I'll look it up. But the idea of everybody's just got to keep fucking everybody else until we're all just one color.
Yeah,
and then I started, when I talk to my kids about this, and I'm trying to think about what I can do as a individual, as a parent, like, so, step 1 for me in the resistance is to teach my children to not be assholes. Step 2 is to put my voice out there and say I have an opinion and it should be heard, because as I've learned through my atheism and through my advocacy of political views on Facebook, I get a lot of private messages from people that say, I wish I could post that, but my family would freak the fuck out. So, I agree with you. Thank you. You give me courage. I get messages like that all the time, particularly when I was really heavily posting a lot of religious stuff, of people saying, I'm absolutely that. But if I posted that, my Jewish parents, my Christian parents would flip out. So, there's that. But I also think that's armchair advocacy, that we're not doing much. So a bunch of my Facebook friends who are real world friends. I have a kind of a weird rule on Facebook, which is that 95% of the people who I know on Facebook, I know in real life. There's like 5% maybe of miscellaneous people who I've never met, but they were so super cool that they joined on I had to have friends. I had to have great conversations with them.
I'm trying to think. I mean, I don't have necessarily a whole lot of Facebook friends, but I think I may actually know every single one of them personally. It's like, if I don't really know you, like, here's my Twitter account.
Yeah. Well, I'm just getting back into Twitter too. But the idea of that they've given it, which has been really gratifying, is that they've been calling their elected officials. And so I found there's a website, you can Google it, who are my elected officials, find all your elected officials, talk to them, call them, express your concerns, go to their office. One of my good Facebook friends today was literally in Dianne Feinstein's office in San Francisco, thanking her for her vote on some of the Senate, on some of the cabinet confirmation hearings. And I have another great friend, Joe Pinto, who's just a beautiful, beautiful human being, who he lives in Portland, Maine, and he literally has every single one of his elected officials local, everything from the governor of Maine down to his local city councilman's number in his phone on speed dial, and he calls them almost every day to say thank you, or I need you to promote this, or I need you to promote that. He'll call the White House switchboard, have conversations with them, puts the transcripts up online as he does them. So he's doing
Very
the things, he's doing that hard lift that I think a lot of people are wondering what to do, how they can get involved. Another way that I think is really important that people are getting involved is I've seen a couple of stories lately on, you're about to say something, I'll let you in, is that something ridiculous like 400 scientists are registering as candidates. Then I saw something like 1,000. There's a large number of millennials and active liberals who are also getting engaged and going, you know what, let's run at the local level. Let's do what they did and go grassroots and start taking over the cities, the towns, the municipal governments, the states, and eventually federal, and do, liberalism gets that bad. People use liberal as a bad word. There's the great lines from West Wing, the last season of West Wing, about being called a liberal. But I've never understood why people use that word as a dirty word when it really just means I would like to help people. I would like to not be a dick. I would like to say that maybe we as a society are rich enough to take care of our poorest, our weakest, our et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I don't really know whether, it certainly feels like the left, as it were, has been all about, saying things without doing things, so to speak. And I'm not really sure how accurate that really is, but it certainly, it certainly doesn't hurt to do something, whether that's give money to a cause, if that's, the simplest, easiest way to do it,
Or even just make your voice be heard, or don't be afraid to point out that, your friend posted a bullshit story online. Yes. This is not, Garrett has my favorite responses.
Fact check your friends.
Yeah, fact check your friends. Garrett has my favorite responses. Garrett goes, citation needed. That's what he'll respond to someone's source with, citation needed. And you go, oh shit, man, that's just, just dying.
That is one thing that I will say that I am doing now, certainly, is that I am, whether it is a friend's post on social media, or whether it is one of these silly memes or whatever, I fact check. I will jump onto, I'll just, this little meme says that Trump's Muslim ban isn't that different from what Obama did in 2011 regarding refugees in Iraq. Let me do some Googling and see how accurate that is. Maybe maybe it's true. Hey, it turns out it's not.
Right. Not at all. Not even a little bit.
But you know what? Sometimes, here's one. Here's one for you. I'm gonna give Donald Trump some points here. Points. The criticism that Trump has gotten for making fun of a physically disabled reporter is actually a little overblown. Because I have, I had a friend on Facebook who,
I remember this conversation,
who called me out for calling him out for doing that, and sent me multiple videos of Trump giving other speeches, of him making fun of Ted Cruz and other people in pretty much identical ways. It turns out this is just Trump's general way to make fun of folks. I'm not hearing myself anymore.
You lost yourself?
No, I can hear you, but I can't hear me. So it turns out that he, I will still criticize him for the optics of the situation, because wow, that was really the wrong time to make that joke.
Right.
But he was not specifically making fun of that reporter's handicap. And this is something that I now know because I have looked at it. But the other thing to do is even, make sure you fact check yourself. Make sure you fact check your friends who you agree with when they post the stuff, the silly meme that criticizes the other side for something. Don't post the silly meme unless it's accurate.
Right on the nose there, man. Right on the nose.
Let's all do our part to eliminate fake news.
Yeah, what's funny is in some of the conversations I've had recently, there's been a lot of like, well, I'll post something like, here are the 20 steps that a Syrian refugee has to go through before they get here, and it's a New York Times article, and the response is fake news. I was like, did you read the story?
Yeah.
No, fake news. So even when someone posts in response to something I said, something from InfoWars, and I roll my eyes, I still click the link and I still read it, and then I look for where Alex Jones is sourcing that from. But this is a perfect example of fact checking your friends and getting involved. Is I had this conversation with a good friend of mine. He's leans conservative. He's a very smart man, and I enjoy our conversations greatly. We always talk very respectful, which is hilarious because his friends typically jump into the conversation and are total dicks. And then they encounter me, and usually the conversation gets to the point where they're like, I don't have time for that response right now, which is where I go, okay, I win.
Yeah.
Or they like, fuck you, you piece of shit, in which case I win. I've been told to fuck off more times than I can count by his friends. Never by him. He's great. But his friends, one friend in particular, I actually have a whole screen cap collection now because he blocks me, so he drops out of the conversation, and then he'll unblock me at some point because he wants to see if I'm responding to something. It's so I have a whole file of screen caps from conversations with him because they're hilarious. But during in this one particular conversation, we were talking about the Muslim ban. Not surprisingly, it's a topical over the last couple of days, and we were talking about what Muslim attacks in the United States from Syrian refugees. And what he did was he posted a story. I think it was originally maybe an InfoWars story. I can't remember where it was from, but essentially, the short version of the story is this: 20 dudes were walking through a Minnesota neighborhood, saying shit. Right, saying shit to people and harassing the neighbors. It was, I guess, a nicer middle-class neighborhood, and like 20 dudes walked through the neighborhood causing trouble. That's the story. The story as it was posted on the Minnesota local news website said basically that. 20 dudes walking through a neighborhood causing trouble. Police are investigating. It got regurgitated onto InfoWars with 20 to 30 Somali Muslims walk through upper class Minnesota neighborhood wreaking terror. So that I was like, we went through the filter, and he posted the second portion of that, the 20 to 30 Somali Muslims walking through neighborhood causing problems. And I had to go track backwards, and where they got it from was because the local news site had posted like the little video that had the police report in it, and you could make out a couple of lines in the police report that said 20 to 30 men, Somali, and then they made the jump that the majority of Somalis are Muslim, so they plugged the Muslim bit in.
Nice.
Right, so that's that idea of like, what's important here? Okay, so 20 to 30 guys walking through a neighborhood wreaking havoc, causing problems. That's a problem, right? That's a gang, or that's gang activity.
Yeah, 20, 30, that's a lot of people.
Hoodlums doing hoodlumy things and hoodlumy times. Okay, I'm on board that's not okay, right? Call the police, get them involved. Fine. Apparently one of them, and somebody pulled out of the police report that one of them asked a woman, who I feel it's entirely appropriate to say a white woman, because that's what the story said, whether or not she knew Sharia law. And so that's, it just like becomes this weird snowball thing. Now, for me, I read that and I give them the benefit of the doubt that they're probably not religious extremists prowling through a upper middle class neighborhood in Minnesota.
They're douchebags.
They're douchebags. They're 20 to 30-year-old gangbang douchebags.
They're assholes saying things that they know will get reactions from people.
Right, provocative assholes. So, but I don't think that's
We'll have to find a much better way to use this.
Hold
on a second.
Edit.
There.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah, they're douchebags. They're just douchebags, and they're doing douchebaggy things, and they're young douchebags. That doesn't mean that what they didn't do was illegal or terrifying. It just means that they're not. You don't need to write a story about scary Muslims when they're scary douchebags. The fact that they may or may not have been Muslims, which is totally unconfirmed, it doesn't matter. It's not relevant. The fact that they may or may not have been black doesn't matter. It's not relevant. The fact that they may or may not have been Somali isn't relevant. It doesn't matter. The fact that there were 20 of them matters. It's scary. But that conversation that I had where it was like I had to like point out his institutionalized bias towards like, oh, Muslims. I was like, no.
Dial it back.
Dial it back, slow your roll. What they did was wrong. And that's the other thing is that I get accused of a lot is you're defending them. No, I'm not. I'm not saying what they did was right. I'm just saying the fact that they may or may not have been Somali and or Muslim makes no difference to the story.
Right.
It just should be reported as 20 to 30 crazy fucking people went through a neighborhood and should be arrested for terrorizing the local residents. What color, what religion they are shouldn't matter.
Right. It's it's actually been interesting because in my entertainment writing, my entertainment writing has actually trained me better in reading the news. When I am writing a story, an entertainment news story that is based on that is come from another site. One of the rules of Cinema Blend that I have to follow is cite the original story. So I may find the story on site A, but site A is actually citing site B. So I click through that link to site B. If site B isn't the one that actually, scooped the story, then you click through to site C and you dig down because you want to make sure that the base story comes from a reliable place, and also B, you want to make sure that there isn't any additional information that's being added as that story gets regurgitated. Because that can happen. Here's a completely innocuous example of essentially the same thing is producers talking. Producers are in talks with Daisy Ridley to be the new Tomb Raider versus Daisy Ridley is going to be the new Tomb Raider. Which version of that story did you read?
I would like to read Daisy Ridley becomes the new Tomb Raider.
I would like to read that story.
I feel like she'd be very sweet and kind to me.
Yes. I would like to read that story.
I like Daisy Ridley.
But depending on which website you went to, you may have read Daisy Ridley is in talks to be the new Tomb Raider. Some places published Daisy Ridley is going to be the next Tomb Raider. Guess what? Daisy Ridley is not going to be the next Tomb Raider. That's Alicia Vikander.
Right.
But
they don't care about being wrong. Wrong isn't a problem. Wrong is just what happens.
Right. Well, let's all try to let's all try to worry about being wrong.
Well, one of the weird things about online media is that there is it's okay to be like and this is maybe in my mind, but if you're writing for the Daily Planet or the New York Times, that you are doing your best to report factual, accurate information. And I don't think that's a priority in journal. I think journalists say that that's a priority. I absolutely think that. If you are a journalist and you write for the New York Times or The Economist or USA Today or any of the AP, any of those true journalistic outlets or periodicals or online periodicals, that, they're shooting for the truth. But I don't think that most of the other stuff that's out there, whether it be entertainment reporting or political reporting, I think it's more TMZ. I think it's more, who did what to whom. Are you sure about that? I don't know. But I mean, obviously, then you get into BuzzFeed getting pulled down by a Hulk Hogan, of all things. So
Gawker.
Yeah, I think your cinema comment, I think, leads right into something that's a little less political, which is
let's do that. Let's do something less political. We have more fun now.
Yeah.
Let's have fun. Let's
talk
about something silly.
On our 7-ish things list, the next thing on my list, which I don't know because my computer turned off, but I believe it was what's in a Star Wars name, and so I wanted to talk now that we've released the name, and it might have been your story that I read.
I believe I wrote. Yes, I do believe I did write the original name. release story.
By the way, did you see the meme where it says Star Wars: The Force Awakens, Star Wars: The Last Jedi, Star Wars from a nap?
From a nap, yes. I wrote a story about that too.
Fantastic. I didn't read that one.
Because there were a number of that was going around Twitter for a while from different. Yeah, like there was what was it? The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi from his nap. The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi with a strong cup of coffee. There were a lot of good now that we know the first two, we can guess the third because they're trying to make a sentence. We just have to figure out what the sentence is.
Fantastic. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you specifically because you and I go back a long way, and we're both Star Wars-y fans, and we both sci-fi fans. And the question that I want to ask is, what about? I lost my feed. There we go. I think it's just the connector there. So what about what is it that makes a good Star Wars name? Because I'm going to guess for a second. I'm going to assume that we both agree that Star Wars: The Phantom Menace is a shit name.
The Phantom Menace is a shit name. It's also a shit movie, but that's not related.
No, and for that matter, Attack of the Clones I think is less shitty, but still shitty as a name. It's Attack of the Tomatoes.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, I think I might actually as a title, I might even dislike Attack of the Clones more than the Phantom Menace.
I hate them both so much.
They're both pretty bad. They're both bad.
And I feel like Revenge of the Sith is bad, but only because. But we accept it as like, oh, thank God, because the first two were so bad.
I think we feel that way about we feel that way about the movie too. It's funny. What makes a good title? I don't know. For so long, even the Star Wars movies, today, the appropriate way to refer to them is, Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back. For me, it was always just growing up. It was just The Empire Strikes Back.
It was Star Wars: Empire Strikes Back and
right.
Jedi. I mean, you would shorten it to Star Wars: Empire and Jedi.
Yeah, Star Wars.
But you would
Empire
never be like,
Jedi.
oh, did you see Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the? No, you'd be like, no, you'd see Return of the Jedi or The Empire Strikes Back,
right.
or for that matter, it's the same thing that we do with modern trilogies like Hunger Games, right? We don't say like The Hunger Games Mockingjay. We say Mockingjay, right? But for some reason, with Star Wars, which
it has to be written out that way.
Yes,
that's the appropriate way to do it.
Right,
it's in the style guide.
But Rogue One broke away from that, so Rogue One was just called Rogue One.
Well, technically,
a Star Wars story.
Yes, and that one was a weird one because before it was officially titled, everyone was just called if you were the long version of the title was Star Wars Rogue One. That's what everybody called it. And then when it was officially titled, it became Rogue One: A Star Wars Story. Which interestingly, in Europe, it's Rogue One: A Star Wars History, which I like better.
Oh, the Philosopher's Stone.
Yeah, exactly. It's a Philosopher's Stone deal. Which I do like a Star Wars history better than a Star Wars story. I don't know why.
I'm going to coin it. Since you're an entertainment writer, you can propagate this for me.
Okay.
But I want to coin it. I want to coin a new cinematic term, much like MacGuffin, of what the MacGuffin is. What was the MacGuffin in that movie?
Right.
So any time from here on out that a movie gets retitled to something else over the pond, it should be called a Philosopher's Stone.
Okay.
So that we would say like, oh, Rogue One, what was the Philosopher's Stone on that one? They would be like, oh, a Star Wars history.
Yes.
And then you can just start using that,
right?
Or the Philosopher's Stone version of.
Yes. Moana had a different name in Europe as well.
You put out your top 10 movie list. This is welcome to the Ish.
Yeah.
You put out your top 10 movie list for 2016, and you saw everything. And I had an immediate question.
I actually didn't see everything. I've only seen 5 of the 9 Best Picture nominees. There's actually 4 I still haven't seen.
Oh well.
But anyway,
that's a shame.
Yes.
You should be fired.
Yeah.
You put Moana. You put
out.
Moana on your list, which I loved. In fact, I've been listening to Hamilton basically on repeat for like 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
It's fantastic. It's so good.
It is.
But Moana, so his music, Lin-Manuel Miranda, his music has a flavor to it. And by the way, about 2 months ago, I rewatched House all the way through. He's in that. He's the roommate in the insane asylum at the end of season 5 of House, where House is in the insane asylum.
Huh.
That's Lin-Manuel Miranda. He's a rapper.
I've actually been rewatching House like slowly over the last several months. When I have nothing else to watch, I'll throw in a few episodes, but I haven't gotten that far up.
Yeah, when he goes away to the psych ward, that's Lin-Manuel.
Okay.
I was like, oh my god, it's like a mega star, right?
Right.
Just it'd be like finding The Rock in the middle of a That 70s show, which you could do. Yeah. So the I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about?
Moana.
So Moana.
Something about
Moana I loved. I thought Moana was
Yes.
great. But if I'm not mistaken, Zootopia was 2016 too, wasn't
Yes.
it? And that didn't make your list.
No, it did.
It did.
It was much higher on my list.
Oh, maybe I just overlooked it. Yeah, because Zootopia was unbelievable.
Zootopia was number 3 on my list. My top 3, 1 to 3, was La La Land, Arrival, and Zootopia.
Okay, so I haven't seen La La or Arrival, and I know I'm supposed to see both of those.
Yes,
but
you are supposed to see both of those. Zootopia was phenomenal.
I saw it on it. So you said it was phenomenal, and then Garrett came back and said something along the lines of like, I thought it was just like animals talking, and you're like, oh my god, it's so much more. And I had that in my head when I sat down and watched it on a plane to the East Coast to New York, and there's been a few movies in my life where I've walked away and had to process, the emotional impact of it or how much it surprised me, just gave me I needed some time to think about it. Moulin Rouge was one of them, just because it was just such a wild sensory experience, but it was sad and it was sweet and the music was great. And Zootopia was certainly one of them too, where it was just I expected talking animals and Dirk says this is going to be something special, blah, 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 whatever. And then by the end of it, I was just like, oh. So this kind of leads into number 6 on the list, skipping ahead, which was movies for moral support, right? Movies to look towards in the world of Darth Orange.
All of Zootopia is my spirit animal.
Yeah.
In these troubling times, because Zootopia is very much, and there's no way. Well, I guess a lot of this has been going on so long that maybe they knew what they were doing when they started Zootopia, but it hit at just the right time as far as a lot of that goes, because Zootopia is just all about, can't we just shut up and live together? Can't we just put the crap away and just all live our lives together, because we're all awesome people, and this will work out, I promise. It is, and I've watched it. It's on Netflix now. Disney has a nice deal with Netflix, so a lot of their stuff is hitting fairly early on Netflix now, and I'll just throw it on in the background.
Yeah,
it is. It's just I'm writing and I'll just listen to Zootopia.
I've watched it a couple of times, and I don't normally do that, and it just really caught me by surprise in a way that I didn't anticipate, and particularly Pixar is the king of here's an animated movie that's going to make you think or be a tearjerker and whatnot. But Zootopia just generally caught me off guard in such a way that it's such a beautiful piece of writing, and it was just allegorically sweet and poignant and smacked you in the face. I was just thinking of one of the other movies that really got me. I don't know if you've ever seen this, and it was on Netflix years ago. It was called Cashback. It was a super strange flick. It was a British flick about this guy, sort of lazy nothing checker at a grocery store, who suddenly discovers his ability to stop time. Super weird flick. But that was another one of those movies that I walked out and I was just like, oh my gosh, I have to think about this one. It just hit me in the face. It was really good. So I want to wrap up the Jedi thing. So what exactly does make a good Star Wars name?
Well, there's a question. If I have a problem with The Last Jedi, I guess it's I prefer a title that has some action to it.
They're striking.
Yeah, The Empire Strikes Back, The Revenge of the Sith, The Return of the Jedi. Even The Force Awakens has something going on.
There's something happens.
Something is awakening. We don't know what it is, but there's an awakening happening.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I don't really have a problem with The Last Jedi as a title, but I'm not in love with it, and I think that's probably why. Is it nothing is happening there. It's just The Last Jedi, and there's plenty to talk about for the next 11 months about what does it mean.
Yeah.
We have written extensively on that topic on every possible interpretation.
I wonder why.
But
you guys writing about Star Wars? What?
Yeah, exactly.
Wonder why. So I don't know. For me, I think you're right. I think the action makes sense because I think universally, Phantom Menace is a silly name, and I think it's all word choice there. I think it's Phantom is a silly word and Menace is a silly word in Star Wars canon. It just doesn't make any sense. Like The Empire Rises or something like that would have been like, okay, there's Empire, it's doing some there's going to be some shit, as opposed to what the Phantom Menace really was, which was the podcast strike or the pod race strikes back.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, great. You clearly didn't have any moral issue trying to stiff the dude out of the engine for money, but you somehow have the moral quandary of not walking out on the street and using your Jedi mind trick to get money from somebody else and just leaving the place. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Why are you putting in a kid in a pod race?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. I think if nothing else, maybe the issue with the Phantom Menace is that, even now, having seen the movie, what exactly was the Phantom Menace?
Right.
Like, what was the menace? It's not really that. The movie isn't really about that.
No.
Yes, there is a menace in the background that is going to be important later, but the movie isn't about that.
No. Force Awakens had a Phantom Menace.
Right.
They totally had a Phantom Menace.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, maybe they were projecting ahead.
Yeah, the Phantom Menace would have been a not a good title. Well, there was Shadow of the Empire was a working title.
Super good.
Of The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the same idea, and yeah, like for that movie that would have worked.
Yeah. Yeah. I had the chance recently in the last year or so I was having a conversation with someone our age who had never seen any of the Star Wars movies, who'd never seen any of them. And so we sat down to watch them all. And I went immediately, I was like, we're doing the machete order. We're doing 4, 5, 2, 3, 6.
Okay. And, I've never actually watched them that way. How does that, and especially not with anybody who hasn't seen them. How did it work?
It's fantastic. It's so much better. So you start with Star Wars, right? You get Luke's story. Here's Luke's story. He's, Tatooine, wants to join Uncle Owen dies, ends up going to the thing, meeting Ben gets struck down, etc. Right. We're familiar with the story.
Yes.
And then you get training with Yoda, etc. We know the story. And then you skip back. So now it's like at the end of Empire, it's no, I am your father, right? And you go, what? No way.
Right.
And
now we flash back.
And now you flash back and you get 2 and 3. 1, you really don't need to watch 1 at all. It doesn't fit. So you start with 2, you start with Attack of the Clones, and now he's still got the shit Padawan ponytail thing. He's still learning, he's impulsive, but now you get Anakin's story for 2 movies where he turns bad. And then you jump back ahead and get resolution between the 2. So as an order, other than the fact that there's a couple of things that get spoiled as a result, sorta.
Okay.
By doing it that way, but just a more enjoyable experience about getting the Skywalker story. What's interesting to me about that more than anything now is that the sort of the rumor mill talking about how maybe this whole time this has really been a story about the Kenobis and we didn't know it. Like we've been thinking that this was a Skywalker story the whole 9 movies, and it's really a story about the Kenobis. We just don't know that yet. So
it's an interesting idea. The whole the mysteries that Force Awakens opened up that we don't have any answers to yet. I'm looking forward to seeing where they go with that. I'm interested.
Yeah, I am too. So what are the 2017? You're in the know more than just about anybody. What are the 2017 movies that are really that are coming on your list that are hits? So obviously, The Last Jedi. That's Christmas. Right?
So we have The Last Jedi at the end of the year.
Beauty and the Beast in March.
Beauty and the Beast in March, which if it's, that's going to be a movie for, if you're a Beauty and the Beast fan, it's going to be
Chuck
your
your
movie.
nostalgia at the door.
Oh no, I'm pretty sure that's not the case here. I'm pretty sure it's bring the nostalgia. If you don't have any, borrow some.
Right. Yeah.
I mean everything. I mean the last trailer just hit.
I just saw it
yesterday, and I mean it's very clear. I mean they are, the other live action Disney fairy tale adaptations have been very much like, we're going to take influence from our original animated version, but we're going to do something else with it. This is a live action remake of the animated movie.
We're going to use the script and redo it.
Yeah. I mean, it seems clear to me that the sell here is come see the movie in order to see our big musical numbers on the big screen.
Right. Come see the movie you've already seen to see it again in a way you haven't seen it before.
Right. That's pretty much where they're going. I mean, I got to interview Josh Gad last spring for a different movie,
Frozen 2.
We talked about Frozen 2, but I was on the press junket for the Angry Birds movie, which actually wasn't as bad as I was.
I
afraid
liked
it was
Angry Birds.
It wasn't bad.
I have kids. I see all those movies, and that one was one that
I asked him about, because he plays LeFou in Beauty and the Beast, Gaston's little henchman dude, and I was asking him about it. And he said that about the fact that this one was actually a musical, which the other live action adaptations have not been. And he said it really, in the case of Beauty and the Beast, it kind of had to be, because it's a recent enough film that people are attached to those songs, and if they weren't there, we'd have some upset people. But he also said that just the production values on those musical numbers are going to be something special.
That's awesome.
So, and I think that's the one thing that they're not showing you in the trails. Like, they're showing you enough that it's like, oh, there she is in the yellow dress, and there she is in the blue dress,
dancing,
and it's like everything about you're going to get the classic Disney Beauty and the Beast, but they're not showing you like a lot of the big musical number aspects, because I think that's what they want to draw you in with, is come check this out, and because be our guest with Disney's capabilities in digital animation these days.
Right.
Like, that's going to be.
And the new trailer shows clearly scenes from this number without ever releasing any of the music. So you haven't heard one ounce is really singing from the movie.
They did one.
There was a little clip of it somewhere in there. But
they've done one commercial, or like a short trailer, that had a little bit of Emma Watson singing, but just a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm actually, I'm a parent, I'm really looking forward to that.
So we got Beauty and the Beast coming up in March. What else? As far as we've got your normal summer stuff. Marvel, we've got Guardians of the Galaxy 2, which it looks like fun. I have no idea what it's about.
Well, it's more of the
trailers don't tell you anything about the story.
More of the Infinity Gauntlet storyline that will never end.
Well, actually, from what James Gunn has said on that, we're actually not going to get a lot of Infinity War setup.
No more Thanos.
In this. This will be a pretty standalone movie. At least that's what the last thing that I heard James Gunn, the director, say about it. So we'll see. I mean, I'm sure there'll be a little bit of something. But yeah, we've got that and Spider-Man in the summer.
Oh, the new Spider-Man with the young kid from Avengers,
Tom Holland,
who I thought he's, as much as I liked the original Tobey Maguire. So it's hard to compare, because the original Tobey Maguire one came out in 2004,
something like that.
Something like it's a really old flick now.
Yeah, 2002, 2003, somewhere in there.
It's obviously entertaining, and I thought Tobey Maguire was really good, but he didn't have the snark that. And I didn't like Andrew Garfield at all.
I actually haven't even seen those movies.
I saw the first one, and I really didn't like it. I didn't like this snark at all. It just didn't feel right. And the new kid, Tom Holland is his name?
Yeah.
Tom Holland, his bit in the Avengers, other than the fact that his eyes moved on the suit, which I hated, but other than that, his banter was on point, was perfect. For what they were trying, for Spider-Man, for that feel of Spider-Man. In the same way that Marvel, it goes to show you how good Disney's been with Marvel, because Disney's, in that partnership with Marvel, has really done a great job of owning the making the characters real. Like Steve Rogers is Steve Rogers, and Tony Stark is Tony Stark, with little exceptions here and there. Right, one's not a drunk.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the television universe has been fantastic. Luke Cage was amazing. What a great show! I've listened to the soundtrack from that 100 times over. It's just fantastic, and I discovered a lot of music that I didn't know. Jessica Jones was phenomenal. Daredevil was phenomenal, and whatever that turning point was, which really feels like Captain America, Iron Man and Captain America, the first Iron Man and then the first Captain America, where they said, okay, let's really do a good job of bringing these characters to life without making them comic and shitty, which is I think the DC movies are going through that growing pain, right? The growing pains of Tobey Maguire movies, the original Fantastic Four, that's what I think DC is going through right now. Is they're figuring out. Wonder Woman looks great, so is that on the list too?
Yeah, I mean, Wonder Woman is coming. That'll be in June, and I mean, God, I hope so. I have been so, and I'm, if anybody actually listens to this podcast, we'll see episode 1. Hey.
Right.
We'll see how much hate I get because I don't hate DC. But I have just not been happy with those movies. They have disappointed me to a large degree.
Is it because they're not fun at all?
They're not fun.
They're like hyper serious,
and that's
they want to be the Dark Knight.
Well, exactly, and my comment, my sort of half joking, half serious comment is that Batman versus Superman was a fantastic Batman movie, just like Man of Steel was a fantastic Batman movie.
Right.
It just. The Dark Knight was great. I love The Dark Knight, and if all we want to do is make Batman movies forever, I suppose we can do that. If that's really what the goal is. But the reason that Batman versus Superman is supposed to be a thing that we care about is because these are two very opposite characters. They have opposing views and opposing sort of general opinions about humanity. And they fight for them, which is why they are both. Which is what makes them interesting to both fight against each other and also fight alongside each other.
Right.
And this Superman is just a little bit too Batman for me.
Yeah.
He doesn't appear optimistic.
No. He's brooding. He's a brooding Superman.
Yeah.
He looks the part. But he doesn't. Christopher Reeves he was great, but he was silly. That Superman was silly.
Sure.
And Lois was a buffoon, and Jimmy was nerdy, right? There's all these little bits to it that when you look back, you're like, this movie doesn't hold up for shit. And it doesn't, except for the fact that it's as a self-contained unit, you're like, you don't have to bring your nostalgia right through the door.
Right.
Climb in the window with your nostalgia and watch that movie. But not Superman 3, because it's really bad.
Yeah.
But Christopher Reeves... It really did kind of encapsulate what I think our idea of Superman is, which is that he's the 1950s dad. He comes in with his metal lunch pail and he puts it down and he takes off and he goes out and he saves the world, but he comes back and he says, "Son, I'm proud of you." And he's that guy. And this Superman is like, he's like millennial hipster brooding Superman.
Yeah.
He's just, the world's so terrible, man. I guess I can fly.
Yeah. And hey, maybe we're just too old and we don't get it, and that's. But if that's the case, I'll accept that.
But Supergirl, the television show, gets that character right.
Yes,
like her character is that character where it's that, yeah, I'm chipper, I'm happy, I'm a person, I've got to do this, and by the way, I'm the most powerful being on the planet who's not Kal-El. I think that's my biggest beef with the movies is that the DC movies are seemingly very joyless right now. But
yeah.
I'm sure you read this, is that The Rock in playing Black Adam in the 2 movies that are coming out where he's playing that role, he said that they're taking a different direction with these.
Yeah. He apparently had a big meeting with DC, he and his $7 Productions crew, and then he's on Instagram, like, we're having this meeting with DC, and, like, we're going to shape the whole DC universe. And then, like, bam, he's not only, like, we're adding a separate Black Adam movie for The Rock. $7 Productions is now, is a producing partner on this deal. There is a possibility, this one's a rumor, but it was an interesting one. Following that meeting, Jeff Johns, the creative director of DC, started following 3 new people on Twitter. two of them were producing partners of The Rock, guys who were involved in Seven Buck Productions, and the third, and I'm blanking on the gentleman's name, but he's the guy who directed San Andreas and the Journey 2.
Journey 2, yeah.
And he's going to be directing the San Andreas sequel and Rampage. He's another buddy of The Rock. So there's now a surmise that, initially it was maybe he's going to direct the Shazam movie, but now that we know there's actually going to be a separate Black Adam movie, maybe he's attached to that one. Maybe he's attached to both.
Yeah,
it looks like The Rock is actually going to be very involved in DC.
So, you and I are both professional wrestling fans. It's just so odd to me that you go back and watch just the shit CGI that was the end of The Mummy 2 with the Scorpion King, and go, that guy is going to be the most successful, well-paid, sought-after actor in Hollywood in 15 years.
Yeah.
With his crazy hair and his fat face, his puffy face, and then all of a sudden you fast forward and here we are. And we were saying the same thing when he was doing the game plan and when he was doing the Tooth Fairy. We were saying the same, well, he had a shot and he blew it. And then Journey 2 and Fast 5 and all of a sudden he's franchised Viagra and blah blah blah.
Yeah, no kidding.
Just a crazy turnaround.
So yes, we got Wonder Woman, and we also have then at the end of the year we have Justice League.
Is that coming out this year?
Yeah, that'll be November.
Okay.
And I'm hopeful for both.
It looks like it has a little. The only trailer I've seen, which I think there only is one, is there is much more fun in the trailer as they're assembling.
There does appear to be. It was an interesting situation. This would have been, I guess last spring. Not long after Batman vs Superman came out, and they were starting filming on Justice League, and they flew a bunch of entertainment reporters. My editor at Cinema Blend was one of them. On 3 days' notice, they flew a bunch of people to England to the set. It was apparently it was like a phone call and can we put you on a plane in 2 days? And they're being very transparent about what's going on with Justice League, and I think some of that was kind of damage control after BVS. They were like, we need to. This was even before Suicide Squad came out. This was when we were all hoping Suicide Squad would be the movie that would turn things around.
You mean this is back when was it after we had seen Batman versus Superman, or was it after we saw the trailer and went, why is Lego Batman fighting Superman?
Right. Yeah, no, this was after Batman vs Superman came out, but before Suicide Squad came out. And we all went, well, maybe Suicide Squad will do it. And then it came out, and I was like, maybe not so much.
What else for 2017? What else?
What else we got? One that I'm actually really curious about. I'm not going to guarantee that it's going to be good, but I'm curious. Of all things, is actually Cars 3.
Oh, the hyper realistic trailer, the new.
Yeah, that initial teaser trailer that is just and here's Lightning McQueen getting his shit fucked up.
Right.
It was the most bizarre thing.
That's the tagline of the movie.
Yeah, pretty much.
Cars 3, Lightning McQueen gets his shit fucked up.
And it was just out of left field. The animation in that particular trailer was much more realistic than traditional Cars stuff, and just the Disney level violence of it all. It was like, whoa, that's where this movie's going to start.
Yeah.
Oh my God. They've done a more extended trailer since then, and it does. The original Cars, I think, is a pretty amazing movie considering it's anthropomorphic cars.
I agree.
The second one is terrible for other reasons.
I agree with that as well.
So I'm looking forward to Cars 3 just because I think if they're going to try some different stuff and maybe kind of go out on a limb a little bit, Pixar can pull that off if they do it right.
Oh, I have a great 7-ish topic for a future podcast, is that we should talk about movies that have multiple movies in the genre or in the canon, right? So like Rocky, there's 8 of them, where they started strong. Rocky's the perfect example of this. They start strong, Rocky, And Rocky 2 is actually pretty good too. And then I know Rocky fans will jump all over me for this. 3, 4, and 5 suck. 3 and 4 are okay. They're novelty because of Clubber Lang and Dolph Lundgren.
Right.
Ivan Drago. 5 is a train wreck. Tommy the Machine Gun. Horrible movie.
Yes.
And then Rocky goes away for like 10 years and he comes back and he does Rocky Balboa, which is really the natural sequel to the first one.
Right.
Like you could skip 2 through 5 and just go Rocky Balboa and get a feel for that. And then watch Creed and go, that is a trilogy. So for some future topic, think about that as movies where movies where we've had them. Like I think Fast and the Furious is probably going to fall into this where the first one's great. You could skip Tokyo Drift and the second one and just go right into Fast 4 or whatever it is. Fast
or maybe
Furious.
even 5.
Yeah.
We'll
talk- that's a future
anyway,
topic.
let's see what else. Valerian and the what is it? World Journey of 1,000 Planets. World of 1,000 Planets. It's the new Luc Besson.
Oh
movie.
God, yes! I was just talking about this with you yesterday.
Yeah. So the thing about it's kind of a funny story.
It's a sixth element.
It's Valerian is a French. It's a comic book from France that Luc Besson has always been a big fan of. So much so that it wasn't actually a huge influence on The Fifth Element. He actually got the artist for Valerian to do a lot of the production design stuff for The Fifth Element. So the look of The Fifth Element is very much inspired by this comic. Well, now he actually has then he actually went and got the rights to actually make a movie based on the comic itself.
Oh, interesting. So this really is like the sixth element.
So if you've seen the trailer and it reminds you of The Fifth Element, that's not an accident.
I haven't seen the trailer.
That is on purpose in about 9 different ways.
Let me ask you about 2 movies that I'm curious about.
Okay.
The first one is your feelings on Power Rangers.
Part of it for me is, you and I were a bit old for Power Rangers started. We were like
in high school.
we were already in high school when Power Rangers was a thing. I had a younger brother, who watched it, so I was exposed to it from the beginning. But I was never a regular viewer. So part of it for me is I'm not attached to Power Rangers at all. Like, if it's great, awesome. If it sucks, I don't care. It's not going to bother me. As far as what it actually looks like, I can at this point I'm flipping a coin and can go either way. Like, it's obviously trying to do the serious, gritty adult Power Rangers. Like we're not going to do the corny, silly stuff like the original show did. And that is either going to be the thing that makes it good or the thing that kills it. And I just don't know which yet. Okay.
Another future topic that we have to add to a future discussion, because it's a much longer discussion, is upcoming book adaptations. And the pitfalls therein. And the 2 that I'm thinking of are Dark Tower trilogy,
yes,
and Ready Player One. Future topic. The other movie that I wanted to ask you about your feelings on was Ghost in the Shell. So obviously there's a bit of a backlash with whitewashing the character.
Yeah, and I just don't understand. Well, I do understand. I mean, the reason that Scarlett Johansson is playing the lead in Ghost in the Shell has nothing to do with any sort of innate need to make the character white. It has to do with the fact that there are no Asian actresses of current star caliber to Scarlett Johansson. Which is a problem in itself. Like that's there's the true answer is not a better answer.
We're gonna get angry tweets. You don't know about actress.
Believe me, there are
Lucy Liu's not too old.
There are wonderful Asian actresses who should be giant stars at the level of Scarlett Johansson, and it would have been nice if they had used this movie to maybe try to make one of them. I would not have been against that. As far as Ghost in the Shell itself,
so is Ghost in the Shell? Is it going to be more, in your opinion? So I've seen the trailer. Trailer looks great. I was a huge fan of the original.
Right.
Love the original. Every time, up until recently, every time there were whispers coming out of Hollywood of we're going to do Ghost in the Shell or we're going to do Akira. Akira is the big one, and Akira's
And Akira is still in development hell.
Yeah, but if they fuck that one up, people will weep in the streets. There will be rioting and weeping.
Yes.
Ghost in the Shell, a little bit less passion than Akira brings, but it's certainly a fervent fan base, and it was one of the first real animes I ever saw that just blew my mind. My big concern about Ghost in the Shell is that it's Eon Flux, is that they, if you change too much, I get that, like with Eon Flux, right? Going back to that one, I get that you can't put that character in that outfit for the whole movie and have people be okay with it. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with changing the outfit and the aesthetic, sort of, kind of keeping the storyline. But I think it was just a shit job of turning it into real life in any believable way.
Yeah. It's
Ultraviolet was a better movie than Eon Flux, and Ultraviolet's one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I love Charlize Theron. Everything from 2 Days in the Valley to The Devil's Advocate. But that's my big concern, is that I like Scarlett Johansson. I really do. I'm fairly positive that my high school friend is her stunt double on this movie.
Probably.
So that's exciting.
They tend to stick with the ones that work. So if she's been doing it for Avengers, she's probably going to do it for the others.
Well, in the original, I think it's the original Iron Man where Black Widow has that fight scene in the corridor.
Oh yeah, Iron Man 2.
Yeah, that's all her.
Oh,
that's
nice.
all her.
Very cool.
I'd say her name and give her a shout out, but she doesn't need it. And she wasn't
you can look her up on IMDb.
Well, and she, truth be told, she wasn't a friend of mine in high school, and we've only had limited interactions. I was just really involved in our planning of our 20-year reunion. So I don't want people like, oh, that's a friend of mine. She's not. I know her. I swapped emails with her. I put together this slideshow, and I was just adamant about like having people not try to star fuck her while she was at the reunion. And she couldn't come, so it ended up not being an issue. But I was fully prepared to be like, yo, bro, back the fuck off. Yeah. But then again, I think my 20. Did you go to your 20-year reunion?
I did.
What was it like for you?
It was the main issue was it was fairly poorly attended.
Really?
Yeah, mine
like 100 people showed up to mine.
Yeah, mine was. Or at least it felt poorly attended. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. It was and just the individuals who happened to show up, I really didn't meet. There weren't very many people who I knew, like I was friends with in school. Like there were a couple people who I still hold a grudge against, who told me that they were going to be there and then didn't show up. Because there's like. Yeah, and
is that Dave Brinkerhoff?
No, no. I actually haven't talked to Dave in forever.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave, are you around? Are you hearing this?
Dave, tweet us out, buddy.
Anyway, I ended up like meeting up with like a friend who I was like half friends with in high school.
Yeah.
And we spent the evening chatting. My wife and myself and her husband, who is also a freelance writer. So we had something to talk about.
Nice.
So and they live in Elk Grove. So maybe someday we'll actually see them again. I missed their Thanksgiving thing, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't great.
Mine was. So I was nobody in high school, other than the fact that I had a funny name,
right?
And but I was super involved in the online Facebook group building up to mine, so everybody knew who I was, and so I was like. I had to do the name check thing, like, oh, hey, it's good to see you, reads name tags, Corey. Or, I picked on Corey. Corey, if you're listening, buddy, I knew who you were when you walked up to me. But there were several people who I would be like, do I remember you? Do I know you? But everybody, I was the most popular I'd ever been in high school, was 20 years after high school. But mine was a really good time. I think the most interesting bit to me was that after 20 years, everybody collectively, universally agreed that the bullshit of high school was bullshit, and everybody was just kind of happy to be like, man, we all made it. Those of us who were made it, and we had a couple people who didn't, and we celebrated those folks as well. So it was all in all, I think, just kind of a fun, odd experience. It made me feel old and bald, but successful, and that I'd not successful in my job, which I do just fine at, but I mean successful in life, that I made it, that I was articulate enough to come up and be like, hey, we shared the same proximity 100 or 1 square mile 150 years ago, and now hey, we made it to the other side. So it was pretty interesting. But and I did the slideshow, so like I did this whole which we didn't show at the reunion, but I posted it. And so I was looking at pictures of people from like, and the whole time I was like, man, I could have been part of this crowd, or I knew these. I could have done this. So I had a little bit of nostalgic regret, but I think everybody was really glad to see each other.
Very cool.
It was all good. So the only thing left on our 7-ish things, and we've covered a lot today on our first go around, is comedy is resistance. And this was just something that I wanted to talk about. Is that there's been a little bit of talk lately about the Sam Bees of the world and the John Olivers of the world, and that. There might have been some influence. I can't help but feel the void of Jon Stewart in the last election, and Stephen Colbert, even though he was on the air, but the other Stephen Colbert,
right?
And that I like Trevor Noah, but he's not Jon Stewart. He's not the same. He doesn't have the gravitas politically or socially that Jon Stewart had, that Stephen Colbert had in his mocking tone, and putting the conservative movement on its ear through the Colbert Report. And so with as many choices that we have now in regards to cable, where I don't even have Comedy Central. I have no way to watch Comedy Central other than Hulu, and I watch just the shows that I watch. So I still watch The Daily Show.
Right. I
still watch At Midnight. But I felt the void of that.
I watched The Nightly Show until they took it off.
I did too. But that's the void that I feel now. Is the void that I feel in the universe is that comedic comedy is resistance, and I think Samantha Bee's doing a great job of that. And I thought, but that show's hard for me to find, and it's not online in a readily accessible format. So, as for us cord cutters, it's difficult. I pay for the HBO Now, so that's how I get John Oliver, and before that, I was YouTube streaming it. So they make his stuff accessible.
Right.
But that putting it on its ear, like Jon Stewart, I think had a great way of. He would criticize the left and the right, but he wasn't apolitical. He had a bias towards fundamentally understanding that everything is ridiculous and pointing out the ridiculousness of hypocrisy and whatnot. And, going back to what we were talking about earlier about the death of hypocrisy, there's been no one to really check you in a public forum in a big way to do that. And Seth Meyers, I think his a closer look segment on his show has been a lot of that. It's been really good. John Oliver's great. Trevor Noah's okay. I feel like he goes for the easy joke too often. He's more millennial oriented, and I want my Walter Cronkite back, I guess, to a certain extent. So,
right.
I don't know. For me, I think it's just important to continue to poke the establishment, to continue to find humor in horror. It's mean to say Darth Orange, but it's funny.
Yeah. Well, and I mean the thing is, it's exhausting. Like, turning on the news, turning on social media every day, and just seeing stuff that's going to depress you over and over and over again. It is absolutely exhausting. But, if you are of the opinion that this is going to be a long-term fight, you can't get exhausted. And so that's where, the comedy is a good thing because it'll let you, laugh for a minute and take a break and take a breath and rest and get ready for the next thing.
Well, I think that's probably a good thought to end on. So, yeah, keep fighting. Keep, fighting whatever it is you believe in, whether it's against me or with me. You're either with me or against me. Yeah. Which is true of everything.
Yeah. Yeah. That covers all things.
You're either alive or you're not. But I think it's a good kind of test run here. I'll take this down, edit it down, and strip it up. We'll put it up online as sort of a beta feel for the format, and I'll figure out all the logistics, making sure everything sounds good for the next go round. But
all right,
I love the format. Thank you for your time. Thank you for anybody who ends up listening to this. All three of you.
Yes.
So you, and you. Thank you for listening. And we'll catch you on the flip flop.
Good night.